Place faith in the Lord, and so shall he in you. Place animosity upon the Lord, and so shall he upon you. This lesson is not an easy one to learn. Some will never fully grasp it, many will only pretend to. Today I would like to share with you the story of how I came to learn this. These are the opening lines in Elias's diary, which you can gain access to by obtaining Clef Key from Randall, the man who breaks you out of the Sub-7 Sanctum in the main storyline. I find it fitting to begin the Pokemon Reborn lore series with the foundation of Team Meteor itself, starting with Solaris and Elias, which is described in the aforementioned diary quite adequately and in detail. However, before you can gain access to the diary, Taka informs you during the events of the Water Treatment Center that his ancestors were the first ones to enshrine Arceus' Meteor, and created the 4 keys to seal it. If you recall what Shelly told us in the events of the Tanzan Cove house raid, she tells the story of an ancient city building a tomb around a meteor landing site, which actually contradicts what Elias tells in his diary, in which he describes living in nothing more than a small village around a meteor. This implies that Elias and Solaris lived during a time after the collapse of the ancient city described in the story, hence why the city that we see in the game today is called Reborn City. As I stated in my Everything That Happens in Pokemon Reborn video, which you should definitely check out, Elias' family traditionally served Solaris' family, and Solaris was essentially the next heir to the family's grand purpose of preserving Arceus' Meteor. In the diary, it's revealed that in his younger days, Solaris was quite rebellious, choosing to actively reject his role within the family tradition. Elias, on the other hand, being born blind, was viewed as inadequate by his family in his role of serving the young lord. Elias and his disability were viewed so poorly within both families that despite it being his birthright to serve Solaris, the two were never allowed to meet until well into Elias' adult life, as it should be noted that Elias is about 10 years older than Solaris. However, when they did meet, precisely because neither family liked Elias, Solaris chose to embrace him as his retainer and as a friend. The reason Solaris didn't want to conform to his family's ideals or purpose was because he found them archaic, but primarily because he didn't think anyone would actually want to go after the 4 keys or the Meteor. Therefore, he thought the whole tradition of guarding the Meteor site was pointless. The two men, Solaris and Elias, found camaraderie in this common ground of wanting nothing to do with their family's traditions or customs. However, Solaris' attitude on the whole matter would soon change, after one day a thief did actually go after the 4 keys and murdered both of his parents for them. After killing the thief in vengeance, Solaris decided to devote himself back to the family's cause, and naturally wanting to bring his friend along with him in pursuit of his new goals, Elias and Solaris eventually formed Team Meteor together. However, at first, Elias was still skeptical after having spent most of his life rejecting his family's tradition. So, in exchange for absolute faith in Arceus, Solaris offered one of the 4 keys, the Emerald Brooch, to his friend, and after just one night sleeping with it, Elias awoke the next morning being able to see for the first time. This miraculous incident made Elias into the man we see today in the game, a devout follower of Arceus and a member of Team Meteor. Elias and Solaris' relationship has some pretty big implications for Elias' ultimate wishes for Luna, as it's highly likely that Luna is set to be the retainer for the next heir of Solaris' family, Taka. And later in the game, Taka does state that him and Luna were childhood friends. Interestingly enough, even though Elias has mentioned Solaris, and obviously the two's connection runs deep, the two have actually never interacted on screen before, which I find fascinating, and it's something I'm looking forward to as it just has to happen. Especially now that Elias has possession of one of the 4 keys, the Emerald Brooch, and I imagine he'll have to return it to Team Meteor sometime soon. Another curiosity involving Elias' involvement in Team Meteor right now is that we're still unsure what his whole stance on Lyn is, given that it's pretty apparent now that there's a schism between those loyal to Solaris and those loyal to Lyn within Team Meteor. This is evidenced before the Fiora Mansion house raid, when Blake and Sirius comment on how old-fashioned Solaris is, and generally expressing their disdain for him. Among those still loyal to Solaris, obviously Taka is among them, given that the only reason he even stayed with the organization for so long was because of him. And also one of the other Team Meteor admins, Eclipse, before being brutally murdered by Sirius, also expressed her loyalty for Solaris' leadership in particular. I would also be comfortable counting Zell in this group, only because Zell was the one who introduced the Pulse Machine to Team Meteor, and that was implied to be quite a long time ago, given that by the time Shelly and the player make it to the abandoned house in Ametrine, where Eve and Lumi once lived, their deaths are treated as more of an urban legend among the citizenry. Ultimately, there's also a great deal of irony in the lives of both Elias and Solaris, with Solaris' journey beginning with a thief hunting the 4 keys, only to now end up hunting them himself with Team Meteor, and also the fact that Solaris once rejected the ideals of his family for being archaic and old-fashioned, only to now be rejected by his peers for being old-fashioned and archaic himself. And then with Elias, who actually has his backstory foreshadowed when Radames hypnotizes him and turns him into his butler. The most ironic thing of all for Elias is that despite gaining his sight, he's as blind as ever to the needs of his own family and also to the deeds of Team Meteor, while still calling himself a holy man of Arceus. That's all I have for you guys today in terms of Elias, Solaris, and the foundations of Team Meteor. If you found this video interesting, go ahead and give it a like, and go ahead and sub for more Pokemon Reborn lore videos in the future.